a complete and utter disgrace, a total farce, a middle finger to the American people, trauma inflicted on the Epstein survivors. What the Trump regime just produced in response to the Epstein Transparency Act is not what was required. It is an absolute violation of the law. It is an obvious cover-up, a disgrace, a farce. Let's go through what it is that they produced, and let's be very clear. This lawless, criminal, gangster regime strikes again with more criming and further covering up a child sex trafficking ring. Just go through what was produced. So when you go to this DOJ website that says Epstein Library, you can take a look at what's on that website. It says Epstein Files, Transparency Act, first phase of declassified Epstein files, Maxwell proffer, memorandum and correspondence, BOP video footage. First phase? What do you mean first phase? All phases were required by the Epstein Transparency Act to be produced today. So what actually was produced was maybe 10% of what's likely in the DOJ's possession, custody, and control. 5% of that has already been produced. 50% of the 10%. So basically of the 10%, most of that has already been produced before. And what was produced here is basically entirely redacted. I mean, we're talking about 120 straight pages of redactions on this document. This document purports to be grand jury testimony, all redacted. Another 119-page document entirely redacted. Another 55-page document entirely redacted. All of the court files are basically entirely redacted. It's just basically all redacted. And what we also learned as well is that the Justice Department admitted that it applied the same redaction standards to politicians, to rich individuals, and to exposed individuals who were involved with or hung out with Epstein or could have been involved in this trafficking ring or just knew Epstein. They applied those standards as they did with the victims. Remember what I told you that MAGA Mike Johnson was saying? One of the reasons we can't support this legislation is it's going to create a new class of victims, referring to the rich, powerful men who were involved with Epstein. Well, that's exactly what the DOJ did here and said, okay, we're going to redact all the information except for Bill Clinton. There's lots of photos that are just of like Bill Clinton hanging with Epstein or Bill Clinton on airplanes or Bill Clinton in a swimming pool. So Trump had photos of Bill Clinton released and nothing else about anybody else, basically. But if you really dig into it, I'm going to show you that Trump and Pam Bondi missed a few spots, okay? And we've been able to locate and some online sleuths have been able to locate references to Donald Trump because Bondi and Trump are incompetent and they let a few things slip through the cracks. So yes, the Justice Department redacted names and identifiers, not just of victims, but the same redaction standards applied to politically exposed individuals and government officials, even state regime media known as Fox News reports. So when you went to the Department of Justice website, it was like you were waiting on a line to buy concert tickets to even access the website. It says, you're now in line, less than a minute to wait. Okay, so you go into it. What the law required as well, the Epstein Transparency Act, was that the documents were not just loaded, all of them, by the way, not some of them, not a few 100,000, every one of the documents, not phase one, all of the documents, and that they also be done optical character recognition, meaning OCR, meaning it's searchable. So if you type in Epstein, you search the database. If you search Trump, it searches the database and picks out all the names Trump. If you search Maxwell, it searches all of the files and will show you where those files are. Now look, when I was a civil litigator, I would get document productions of terabytes, 3 terabytes, 4 terabytes, meaning you can fill a skyscraper with the amount of documents, multiple skyscrapers. And then you would use OCR software, optical character recognition software, to search the databases, and you would try to do keyword searches as kind of an initial review. I guess before there was some AI review help. That's what I would do when I was a litigator, and I'd have associates go and help me. And the Trump regime's searchable database didn't work. And by the way, how could you search it when all of the documents were basically entirely redacted, kind of crossed out with like these black blocks so that you couldn't even read them in the first place? So you search Epstein, it goes no results found. You search Trump, no results found. You search Maxwell, no results found. And it's obvious what they did. They tried to find any photos of Bill Clinton, and they tried to present those photos and show those photos. Go, look, it was just Clinton. Like, we're not stupid. We know, put it this way, we know from the Epstein estate's production of those 18,000 plus documents, right, that Trump's name is all over it. So if the estate produced those 18,000 documents, right, why wouldn't those documents be here when those same estate documents were given over to the DOJ? And how do I know they were given over to the DOJ? Well, federal judges recently, you probably have seen our reporting in the past 3 weeks or so, when the Trump DOJ asked the federal courts to release the grand jury transcripts they were trying to set up the federal courts, the court said, okay, well, what documents do you have right now? And then the Trump regime had to admit that it has those documents from the Epstein estate. Now, it should also be noted that not only do they have those documents, but we're able to see kind of a list of these other documents that they had, and none of that is being produced here. Now, you take a look as well, and as I said, the Trump regime let some of these photos and documents slip that have Donald Trump's name on it. So look at some of these photos, right, that slip through the cracks. These are photos right here that look like they're taken from Epstein's home. And if you actually zoom in right here, you can see photos of Donald Trump. It looks like maybe that top one is a photo of Trump with, I'm not sure if that's I don't know who that is at the top one. I don't want to guess. But then you have Trump with these girls, and for whatever reason, their faces aren't redacted in this photo because the redaction standards make zero sense at all what they're doing here with this Trump DOJ. But take a look at this one. This one was notable. You see this photo, it says once in a blue moon. It's Epstein with, looks like to be a young lady or a young girl, unclear. And you see they're holding a check that says $22,500, and it's signed by Donald Trump. Does that check look familiar to you? Because remember the Epstein birthday book? Well, this was not produced in the DOJ production today at all. But the one that is once in a blue moon. This was in the DOJ production right here that has this check. But the one that wasn't in the DOJ production today, but was in Epstein's 50th birthday book, was this one right here. Epstein and a longtime Mar-a-Lago member were joking about selling a fully depreciated woman to Donald Trump for $22,500. And you see them right there holding that check. So what it looks like happened is the woman who was sold, or that they're mocking right now as being fully depreciated to Donald Trump in exchange for $22,500. It looks like Epstein's in the photo with that woman or with that girl holding the check, basically saying, look, I'm selling her to Trump, right? That's what it appears. Also, there was this document which had been publicly released before, but this was in the release today as well. And it's a lawsuit filed by a Jane Doe, I believe who was about 13 years old at the time, a 13-year-old, versus the Epstein estate. This case arises out of years of sexual abuse and exploitation of a young girl by notorious pedophile and convicted sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein. It all started in 1994 when a 13-year-old Jane Doe met Epstein and defendant Ghislaine Maxwell at a summer camp in Michigan. Jane Doe was their first known victim and was subsequently abused by Epstein and Maxwell for years as a young girl, suffering unimaginable physical and psychological trauma and distress. Despite that, Jane Doe has persevered and survived to tell her story, to hold the perpetrators accountable, and seek justice for the atrocities committed against her. This was a lawsuit filed back on January 17th, 2020. You go through the allegations about the grooming, how this 13-year-old girl was a student in an arts camp in Michigan, and Epstein and Ghislaine find her there and actually bring her, go to paragraph 17 right here, to Mar-a-Lago. During one of Doe's encounters with Epstein, he took her to Mar-a-Lago, where he introduced her to its owner, Donald J. Trump. Introducing 14-year-old Doe to Donald J. Trump, Epstein elbowed Trump playfully, asking him, referring to this 14-year-old girl, "This is a good one, right?" Trump smiled and nodded in agreement. They both chuckled, and Doe felt uncomfortable at the time, was too young to understand why. Meanwhile, you have the DOJ's official account saying that the initial deadline is being met as we work diligently to protect the victims. It's not an initial deadline, okay? The Epstein Transparency Act specifically says all unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in the possession of the DOJ must be produced by December 19th, not an initial phase. Also, what the DOJ is now claiming is that the men who were involved in the trafficking ring, that they're the victims and they're the ones who should be protected as though they're the actual survivors or victims. I mean, just think about the re-traumatizing of these survivors right now that the Trump regime is putting them through. Democratic Congressmember Ro Khanna, who worked with Thomas Massie to put forward the Epstein Transparency Act to get the discharge petition passed, just issued a statement about this massive cover-up. Play this clip.
The Justice Department's document dump this afternoon does not comply with Thomas Massie and my Epstein Transparency Act. They released one document from a New York grand jury of 119 pages, totally blacked out. This despite a federal judge ordering them to release that document. And our law requires them to explain redactions. There's not a single explanation for why that entire document was redacted. We have not seen the draft indictment that implicates other rich and powerful men who were on Epstein's rape island, who either watched the abuse of young girls or participated in the abuse of young girls and the sex trafficking. The reality is Pam Bondi has obfuscated for months. She first said there were no more documents to be seen. Now she's admitting and releasing hundreds of thousands of documents, but it is an incomplete release with too many redactions. Thomas Massie and I are exploring all options. It can be the impeachment of people at justice, inherent contempt, or referring for prosecution those who are obstructing justice. We will work with the survivors to demand the full release of these files, to demand justice for the Epstein class and accountability.
Democratic Congressmember and ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Congressmember Garcia, just said the following.
Ahead. But we also need to be clear at this moment. I've been on the phone with Jamie Raskin and the Judiciary team most of the day. And we agree, we're going to likely have to take legal action if the Trump administration continues to stonewall, continues to not provide us full transcripts, and clearly they don't have a real interest in transparency. The searchable bar that they've included that's supposed to be searchable for the public is not even functioning correctly. And so this is not a real release. This is continuing a cover-up that's been going on now for months.
Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California, thank you so much. Appreciate it, sir.
But on the other hand, you have MAGA Republican Congressmember James Comer saying that this is what transparency looks like. This is what Congress voted for. And the Republicans are praising Donald Trump and saying all of these redacted documents, this is what the American people wanted. Folks, these are bad, evil people. These are evil human beings. You know, these are devilish human beings is who they are. These Republicans right now covering up a child sex trafficking ring. Watch what Comer says. This Republican, play this clip.
Congressman James Comer. Congressman, I understand that you have already seen much of what is being released today. Is that correct? And what have you seen?
Well, we've seen a lot of documents. What I think's not been accurately understood by most Americans is the Trump Department of Justice, they have released several thousand pages of documents. Now, what they've released in the last 30 minutes is another several 100,000 pages, some of which we may have already had, but we're going through them as we speak. It'll take several days to go through all of these documents, but this is what the American people wanted. This is what Congress overwhelmingly voted for, and I applaud the Trump administration for complying with this request and getting these documents so that everyone can lay eyes on them and judge for themselves who the bad guys are in this whole disastrous Epstein saga.
On the other hand, here's what Congressmember Garcia says. Play this clip.
Well, first, I think we should be very clear. This is absolutely breaking the law. I mean, they have not produced actually what they were required to do, which was all the files by today in a way that was searchable for the public. And that is not what's the case. What we have essentially is, one, we have a group of documents that have already been released to the public. And so there's, could be even more than half of the documents we're reviewing right now have already been released. This includes court documents. It includes public video that's already been released to the public. It includes, other civil case documents that are in there. The prison footage from Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony. And all of that information, including about 33,000 pages that were initially released to the Oversight Committee, are all in the public record. That already does not count for new information. Then we have of what appears to be new, including some photos and other documents. Those are highly redacted. And we don't really have any explanation as to why they've been redacted or what is actually there in those documents. And so we have right now, what we're seeing is not transparency. This is not what the law passed. This does not meet the subpoena that the Oversight Committee has in place. What it is defying the Congress and, quite frankly, defying what the president signed into law in releasing all of these files. And so
now let me share with you what Republican Congress member Mike Lawler says. This guy is a spineless individual. He acts like he's a moderate, but here's what he says in response to the release of the files today. Let's play it.
And if there is evidence that comes out through this release of anyone, whether they be in government or entertainment or the financial world, they should be prosecuted.
So,
and we will see what obviously this searchable database with hundreds of thousands of documents and obviously more to come.
So the House.
And now more from MAGA Republican James Comer, who says, hopefully this ends everything because we've turned over everything we were supposed to. No, you didn't at all. Here, play this clip.
There are a lot of questions that the American people have, and we're going to do everything we can on the House Oversight Committee to get answers, and hopefully it'll be bipartisan. Hopefully the Democrats will stop playing games. They've been releasing a picture or two and redacting the faces to make it look like Trump had some liability. And
more from Democratic Congress member Garcia right here as well. Let's play this clip.
So the review will continue. They're now saying they're going to try to get these documents over the next few weeks. Our initial estimation, and again, this is our estimation right now, it could be that we're only getting about 10% of what the DOJ likely has. And of that 10%, 5% of that has already been released, and the other 5% is highly redacted. So we're getting very little so far. We hope to get more in the days ahead. But this is Pam Bondi. Donald Trump should release all the files today and immediately.
Well, there you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers. We appreciate your support.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.